Hi, everyone. Welcome. Carl Steinbeck here. Want to jump on a Saturday night here, just cover the hearing that we saw yesterday. In case any of you missed it, I just want to do a real quick recap on some of the things that transpired in that hearing. And before I go into that, though, I do want to acknowledge John put out a number of shorts, both on TikTok and also on YouTube. You guys might have seen some of those. So thanks to John for doing that. He spent a lot of time doing that, and looks like his efforts paid off. So thanks, John, for doing that while you're up in Canada. So in any event, we also got the key comment that was heard from Georgia during the proceedings. So this is the main focus was Sergeant Corbett, who I call General Corbett because he comes across so highly professional, so highly knowledgeable, and he's such a unsurpassed expert and being a law enforcement officer testifying on a case, a murder case of all things. So you cannot ask for a better witness from the prosecution, from someone from law enforcement. And so they want to keep him out of the defense is trying to keep him from being certified as an expert by the court, noted as an expert by the court. And the uh, the thing that Rashbaum raised in the hearing, he was the one arguing this motion. So it was sort of a convoluted motion of sorts. They couldn't really decipher some of it, but from what I gathered of it, what he was essentially saying is that he doesn't object to the underlying data that Sergeant Corbett would testify to, meaning the emails, the texts, the cell phone data that's been extrapolated. And law enforcement does have a number of software systems that they used, and Sergeant Corbett is actually an expert in using that. But it sounded like he was mainly concerned about a summary of the report. There's like a 329 some page report that was compiled in a PowerPoint presentation, and that's what they want to admit to, or at least present to the jury. And Rashbaum was basically saying that can be all demonstrative evidence, but not be actually admitted into evidence. So it wouldn't go back with the jury when they deliberate. So, and his main issue that he was hung up on was the summary includes things beyond which Sergeant Corbett is technically an expert at. It comes to some conclusory assessments that he felt like he wasn't qualified to give. But in the end, the judge he said that he's going to look at that some more. The summary was something that wasn't really quite clear whether the summaries includes stuff that's actually related to his normal line of testimony or not, whether it's actually something that they don't dispute the underlying data for, and whether it's more of a opinion type comment that is in the summary that's made by Sergeant Corbett. That's a deduction of the different data points. So it seems like we didn't really have a clear idea of exactly what data they're talking about and what summary points that they were raising. So, and that's in large part because we haven't seen exactly what the document, underlying document, has for its content. So I can just say that as a trial attorney, if you have the underlying data in the body of a document that you want to get admitted, if you have a summary on it, summaries can generally be objected to, and there's good reason for that because maybe the summary comes to a different conclusion or it's pulling different data pieces together that the body of the document does not cover. So what I didn't hear by either party was whether the body lines up or not with the summary. So if you got a disconnect there, then that can be a legitimate issue for the defense, and I can see them raising that point. But they didn't really make a good point of it. That didn't wasn't brought out by the judge's questioning, and it wasn't brought out by the state either. So you sort of left scratching your head, like what exactly are they talking about in the summary that they object to? So the way they couched it wasn't very clear, and like I say, there wasn't those exact examples. One of the things I know that he was complaining about, talking about Rashbaum here, he's complaining about the fact Sergeant Corbett, he was asked a number of questions by the prosecution office to actually address those questions, and that's perfectly legitimate. To have law enforcement and especially prosecutors saying, "Well, can you go back and address these issues? This is what I really need to present to a jury." After all, somebody like him, that's a data analyst, forensic data analyst, does not know exactly what the prosecutor wants. He can't read his mind or their minds. And so it's normal to be told, hey, can you add this to a report that explains this? Because they'll verbally ask the question, of course, and then you'll say, oh, yeah, I either know the answer to that or I'll figure it out and get back to you and tell you what the data actually reveals. So he's not manipulating data at all. Uh, that I would say is something for the defense to worry about. They're probably worried about stuff that he has an opinion on, But the unique thing about it is they're trying to object to him being an expert. Yet I went back and looked at the transcript for Charlie's trial, and the prosecution never even attempted to introduce him as an expert. They just asked if he had experience dealing with historic communication analysis. So it was really, they didn't think it was necessary for him to be quote unquote certified as an expert. It didn't come out at that proceeding. So it's sort of like, why is defense raising this now when it wasn't an issue that they tried to certify as an expert before? And now maybe the state is going to try to certify him as an expert in certain things, but not others. So, Rashbaum was saying things like, he's not really certified to explain emails and text messages, but that's really simple type data, and they have software to do that. So anyway, Rashbaum wasn't really making a whole lot of sense, I guess, in a lot of what he was saying, and he wasn't really clear and concise. So in any event, I think in the end, all this evidence is going to come out. The summary, I'm not worried about. If the judge says strike some of that, in the end, the sum and substance of what Sergeant Corbett can brilliantly testify to is going to come in to the jury, just like it did for Charlie's trial, and it's going to help convict Donna Adelson. So there's no issues about that, no issues of concern for me. Now I'm just going to look here and go through some other things. Um, yeah, and I should note that Rashbaum said he did not anticipate challenging the accuracy and reliability of the underlying data. So the judge didn't hold his feet to the fire and say, well, if you challenge it, I need to know now. This is what this hearing's for. I don't want to hear this be brought out in the middle of the trial. So I just thought that was something I was surprised that the defense tried to slip in about. We don't anticipate when you actually have the motions hearings to get all that resolved on the record and slugged out without holding up witnesses and the jurors. So I thought that was something that could have been cleaned up a little bit better on the record. And I should also note that Sergeant Corbett has testified 102 times now as a historic communications analyst. And so, I mean, he's basically an expert already. I mean, you don't even have to have testified before to be admitted to as an expert in states across the United States. It's sort of a low bar. If you have some kind of specialized knowledge in how things work, and the trier of fact doesn't really have any knowledge of how things work. So I mean, technically, I could be admitted as an expert in live streaming on StreamYard, even though I've had my share of technical problems, right? So, anyway, the standard is pretty low. So, I think like I say, whether he's admitted as an expert or not, it's not a big deal because he definitely comes across like one. And the information is so very detailed and it's so very damning against the Adelsons of Florida. All right, next we have the judge said he was going to allow the testimony, the storyline of the book that Wendy wrote that was taking a dig at her husband at the time, was written over a year, about 2 years before the divorce happened. So about 3 years before Dan was murdered. And it's very critical there. You can really see her laying out the seething hatred of Dan, and she had lied in the previous court proceeding about during Charlie's trial that this was not about her life; it was about a friend of hers. When the actual book acknowledgments talk about how this is pretty much written based on her life. So so I think there's a lot of good nuggets in there to bring out about how she hated Tallahassee and how she mocked that whole culture there, and she called it Hiawassee Springs, but the setting was all still the same. Instead of Florida State University, it was Northern Florida State University, etc. So the contempt she had for everything Markel and also Tallahassee is really laid forth clearly in that book, which is a good thing to show motive. The other thing that was brought out was changing the boys' names. The defense did a motion to keep the name change of the two boys that were a product of the marriage of Dan Markel, who was murdered by the Florida Adelsons, and then also Wendy Adelson. So those two boys' names, in case you're new to this channel or this case, the last names are changed really rapidly. I think she enrolled them in school already using a different name, and she used it under the guise of we have a safety threat. based on my ex-husband being murdered, we got to change their names to my name, which if they're going to go after Wendy, obviously anybody Googling her name would know she's not an Adelson by last name. Sure, her last name is I'm assuming she's not a Markel. She was an Adelson the entire time she's married. So she's kept that name all the time. So making her name match the boys, it makes no sense at all. And that was really not brought out in any trial proceeding so far either. And it is very damaging. As I said last time, this is so damaging to strip the Markels of their honorable name and reputation and lineage, to do it that 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 cruelly to the boys, that not only did they lose their dad, but every form of identity and every relationship with the Markels was completely severed and gutted to the maximum extent possible, including the name change, including a name, the middle name of one of the boys had a connection to both sides of the family, and Wendy didn't even want um, any connection whatsoever to a Markel. So that name was changed too, the middle name. So how you seriously going to say that the hitmen were going to look up the middle name of one of your sons? So it's just absolutely preposterous, and it's I'd say one of the top 10 or 15 indicators of the motive and hatred against the not just Dan Markel but all the Markels. And so what the judge said was that he's only allowing that for impeachment purposes. Initially, if I recall correctly, he said it wasn't coming in, and then he asked Georgia what was it being used for, and she said motive, and that's all she said, motive. She didn't strenuously argue or argue with any kind of uh, seriousness or passion or tenacity in her voice. So I was sort of disappointed in that she didn't show the seriousness of this. And I can tell you as an attorney that's been a part of many, many trials over many years and decades, I can tell you if you don't sound like you're gung ho about what you're arguing, a lot of judges will take it like you're not really serious about it and you're okay. What the judge's ruling is either way. So that was bothersome for me. And for the judge to then rule that it's only coming in for impeachment purposes, it's sort of like, well, how are you going to impeach your own witness? After all, Wendy is a state called witness, and she can treat her as a hostile witness, and she somewhat did that in the last proceeding, but she never really did previous. And by treating as a hostile witness, that means you can actually go from asking open-ended questions to then because you're not getting um, truthful testimony or straight answers, you're basically turning into a cross-examination mode of your own witness. So it's basically you're trying to impeach your own witness at that point. So Wendy did a little bit of that last time, and so for the judge to say you can only bring this in for impeachment when it's really a strong motive, I just thought the prosecution was really flat on that point. They're flat-footed, and they should have strenuously argued that the judge is one of the top indicators of the hatred of the Markels. And so anyway, to have it be impeachment, under what scenario would you impeach is what I'm wondering. It's like, do you got to tee up a question that would then allow them to then try to impeach her with it? So would you ask a question that would have something to do with generically, like, isn't it true you disliked anything have to do with the Markels? And then she says no, and then you want to impeach her. Wasn't it true you even changed the boys' names out of disgust and annoyance with the Markels? It just doesn't make any sense. The judge, I think, has made made an incorrect ruling, but like he has in the past, I think the more he sits on it and thinks about it, I think he's going to change that ruling. Like I say, it can be reopened by the prosecution. It's not a big, convoluted, complex issue. It's very simple, straight, clean, and straightforward. So I expect that to be corrected before trial. So I'm not going to have any concerns about that because I think it will be fixed. Then, yeah, the judge said depending on what comes out during the examination of Wendy, that's how you'll rule on how it comes in. So anyway, I think just like there was sort of a hiccup with Wendy having to be called back as a witness, it's sort of like it seemed like none of the attorneys and the judge are really on the same sheet of music and really up to speed on the proper way that kind of motive evidence comes into play. But in the end, like I say, I think it's gonna be fixed by the prosecution and the judge. The other thing that Georgia had mentioned is that there's no jailhouse calls with Charlie on them that are going to be offered by the state. And this is something I said many weeks ago, back last fall. I didn't think the prosecution really want to bring these tapes in because most of what it is Charlie bashing the Tallahassee jurors. Remember, he called them like fourth graders or a bunch of knuckleheads kind of thing. and Georgia just had to play some basically cartoon type Dateline special, and these folks were bought hook, line, sinker into this bogus theory that he's guilty. So that's really not so much direct probative evidence of Donna's guilt. It reveals their type of thinking and the way Donna was, just either acknowledging and agreeing with Charlie, or just sort of trying to soothe his ranting there by making different gestures. But in any event, I do think that's a fair ruling, because it definitely would be prejudicial for that to come out. I think the issue, though, that's not, and also part of the issue was this joint defense. There were some arguments being made about there's a joint defense agreement between the defense counsel for Charlie and also Donna, which I guess an agreement with Rashbaum himself, because he represented both. But in the end, what that means is that sort of the privilege exists between both parties, as they're part of one team. And so, but my question would be like, well, if you say something outside your your close conversation between the parties, between the attorneys and your witnesses, or I should say your clients, if that gets leaked out to the public and intentionally is leaked, then how's that protected by any kind of attorney-client privilege of a team? So I didn't understand that at all. Why they would think that would be relevant at all, and that was really not brought up in much detail, especially since the prosecution said they're not going to bring that out. So I do think that the the statement, though, that Donna talked about talking to Dan and leaving the country, as I've said before, I think having Dan Roshbaum's integrity being brought into question, like he's advising her on whether she could possibly flee the country or not, it really damages him as an advocate if the jury heard that. So if I was a prosecutor, I wouldn't want to make that a reversible error thing, and just and basically say you're going to admit it, but you're going to blurb out the name of the person she talked to, and then they can make their own inference who that might be. So that's why I think the best way to handle that is as a prosecutor. Then the other thing is, yeah. So just to clarify, her conversation with those other folks about conversation with Wendy as well, and um, Wendy not having any interest in making any comments about Charlie being convicted of murder and stuff like that. I don't think those are going to come in. I just think the ones that they're going to try to maybe introduce are the ones having to do with the exact part about her discussing what she had talked to Dan about, fleeing the country for Vietnam and looking at countries that had non-extradition treaties with the United States. So that's really damning information, and I think the state would be wise to bring that out, but like I said, in a very limited snapshot basis. The judge also had ruled that the Latin Kings name is not admissible. Gang activity and threats against the Adelsons, he said Miss Adelson. So I think that was tied into Wendy Adelson. He said Miss Adelson. Other times he said Ms. Adelson. So it's had to do with Wendy and the boy's name change around that same time. So it wasn't really clear on the record which Adelson female he's talking about. I assumed it to mean it was the Adelsons. It was Wendy, and I'm pretty sure about that. But like I say, the record wasn't that clear. The judge mentioned he's still researching the issue of Jeff Lacasse, and Jeff Lacasse's statement that he brought out in court during Charlie's trial that had to do with Wendy saying a few days before the murder that Charlie had looked into hiring a hitman a year before, the summer before, and the cost was either 5,000 or 50,000, and he couldn't remember which. But that statement actually did come out in court in Charlie's, and so that's obviously something that's very damaging to the defense. They want to keep that out. So the judge is still withholding a ruling on that. I think he should make the right call again and deem that admissible. He deemed it for impeachment purposes admissible. I think it's admissible just as a co-conspirator statement, and actually an attempt to recruit another conspirator into the agreement. So, and I think it also goes the state of mind of the co-conspirator. So I think there's a number of arguments they can make for exceptions to hearsay, where that could come in not just under impeachment, but under actually direct evidence. And it doesn't have to depend on what Wendy says or doesn't say for impeachment purposes for it to come in. So I think it's still going to come in. So I'm not worried about that. Whether impeachment or otherwise, the jury is going to get that. And I don't see the judge having an inconsistent ruling between Charlie's trial and this trial, even though the defense may come up with new kind of fangled arguments. I think in the end, the rules of evidence do allow it. Also goes to the how it shows in indication of how long this conspiracy actually lasted. It was like over a year. It shows that the planning was in place, and then also that Wendy knew about it. So think about it. Wendy mentions a hitman effort was hitmen were actually sought out a year prior, and to make that comment, and then Dan dies days later by a hitman. What are the odds of that happening? So it definitely is a strong indicator of her involvement, and so that evidence should come in as well. Both sides then also agreed that the trial would begin on the 20th of Friday, assuming the jury is selected by the day before. So we'll hear opening statements in the morning, and they may get to the first witness before lunch. Otherwise, we'll hear our first couple witnesses after lunch on the 20th of September. The state anticipates 6 to 7 days for their case in chief, which is a little bit shorter than I was hoping for. I think they got a lot of witnesses they can bring forward that could stretch it out a little bit longer than that. And then for Rashban's defense, he said he expected there to be 2 days of testimony for the defense. And if he's saying 2 days, you might have maybe you won't even have 2 hours of testimony. So that's what I expect for that. I think you may have one Donna taking the stand for the defense. You may have a couple more, but they're not going to be really any much substantive for witnesses. If they do want to call those witnesses, they put on the witness list. I think if the prosecution does a good job and neutralize their testimony, they may just decide to call some of those off. But I would I would be surprised if it lasts even a day if they don't want to drag it out with a bunch of these character type evidence witnesses for Donna. And then he also warned Donna that next week's pretrial hearing is the time to take a plea, if at all. So he did mention that if she's convicted, he's tied. His hands are tied at sentencing. In other words, you're getting life without parole. So if you're looking at taking any serious thoughts about pleading, next week is the time at the final pretrial hearing, because otherwise he may not accept a plea of guilty. So in any event, that's it in a nutshell what happened. So there's not really any big concerns I have. I thought one of the most telling things, I was circling back to the first comment I made about Wendy being mentioned under Georgia's breath. Wendy, Wendy, Wendy. She said under her breath, but the mic picked it up. And I think it's really telling to show, why would she be mentioning Wendy at the beginning of this hearing? This is a trial about Donna, but I think it just goes to show you Wendy is in their gun sights. They're going to bring her down. It's happening pretty soon after Donna's trial. I predict it'll happen before the end of the year. It better happen before the end of the year, because I think those that are definitely following this case closely, that is the ultimate outrage of why Wendy Adelson is still walking around acting like nothing happened. And she's the one that, based on the evidence we can see through the Florida Sunshine Law, she's the one that lit the fuse. She's the one that teed this up. She's the main benefactor, had the most motive, means, and opportunity to enlist others to help do this murder for hire against the Honorable Professor Markell. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and turn it over to questions now. And if you do have questions, I normally ask folks to, if you have the capability to do so, put red emojis for red emoji question marks before and after your question, so I can distinguish those from chatter among yourselves. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, the two is saying, you did notice that during the trial, Donna did not once converse or make eye contact with Alex Morris. Is his presence purposely and purely as a representative lawyer from Tallahassee to appease the locals? I think he's that's one of the main reasons he is hired, because Rashbaum does not have any kind of cultural connection to the people there, and he looks like a fish out of water there. So I think what you'll see is Alex Morris is probably going to do a little bit more in the actual trial than what he did at this hearing. This hearing was pretty streamlined, and I think that Morris is probably going to be the main one doing jury selection, and he'll try to make it look like, hey, Rashbaum is a good guy because he's tied in with me as a local attorney. So he's going to be hitting up a lot of the local attorney type connection with the juries, trying to bring up facts about his ties to the community and whatnot. So anyway, in the end, it's not going to matter. And that's certainly, a defendant can hire whoever they want as lawyers. And It actually is a good thing, as I've always said before. You want to have some local counsel because otherwise there's just a lot of problems. Even though that you're in the same Florida legal system, there are a lot of locality differences between judges and local rules, as well as the way the community operates, thinks, and breathes, and views it from the jury box. So I don't have a qualm saying that. I don't think it's I think it's pretty obvious that after the disaster with the super expensive jury selection team out of New York and Charlie's trial, how that was basically a pretty much a unmitigated disaster. It did no benefit for Charlie, and anyway, I think they decided to go a lot cheaper route, and go with a local attorney, which seems to be a good move. But yeah, I do think he'll be more involved, also questioning some of the witnesses and whatnot. But I think Donna really wants to look at Rashmam all the time. If you notice, there's one part where Rashmam left the council table and he was walking back, and Donna had these really strange looking eyes. I mean, they're really beady, bugged out looking eyes. You can see all the whites around her eyes, and it was really a creepy kind of look. And I don't know what that was attributed to. Was it maybe some of her psych meds she's on or something? But it definitely looked like she was zoned out, and really, like I say, really a bizarre look. And so who knows what her demeanor will be in the actual trial if she's going to be sort of zoned out like that. But yeah, if she didn't pay any attention to Alex Morris, that's probably going to be the same kind of thing that is going on in the actual trial, because anybody from Tallahassee, I think she has no respect or regard for. So that's probably going to come out. So next, Serendipity Smiles saying, if Donna's offered a plea deal, what sort of deal do you think it would be? I don't think they're going to ask her for a plea deal. I think they know the Adelsons don't take pleas. They go toe to toe, knock down, drag out. They think they're innocent. They're not going to admit to anything. And what's Donna got for motive to plea? It's 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, 20 years. No matter what it is, she realized any kind of plea agreement is going to result in her dying in prison. So in her mind, her best chance of walking out of a jail or prison is to roll the dice and make the state prove their case, and have her attorney slug it out in court. And right now, she believes that Rashbaum is a miracle worker of attorneys, and he can do no wrong. So let her believe that, and see what happens. All right, Rantina is Barbosina is saying, "What's your opinion on the sealed hearing about Robert Adelson's testimony? Will we able to have access to that information at some point?" Yeah, I did not mention that Robert Adelson, because that's sealed. He is obviously the older brother of Donna, from Donna's children, and so they had Rob first, um, and then Charlie, and then Wendy's the youngest. So I do think the testimony has to do something with. Maybe it was raised by the defense. I think the defense is extremely scared of Robert Adelson testifying, Dr. Robert Adelson testifying. He'll be such a damaging witness to show the family dynamics and their absolutely extreme behavior upon the finding out of the murder of Professor Markel, and the way they acted and hushed up things with him, and the really bizarre nature. I think it's going to really help show that Wendy was a part of this, and they all acted guilty. These Florida Adelsons. So and I think that Dr. Adelson is a stand-up, honorable kind of guy, that he's gonna do the right thing. And he's thinking about the boys, unlike the other Florida Adelsons. These boys had their father murdered by other family members, something so despicable and heinous as that. So he's gonna stand up and do the right thing. There's no doubt in my mind. So good question. You're asking, why do you not think they're using Wendy's police interview? Well, Wendy's police interview, I think they don't really go into a lot of the details. I think some of those details could be brought out to impeach Wendy, and I think they're going to maybe save those for Wendy's trial. I don't think they really thought they're going to ever try Wendy in the beginning, but I do think that all this pressure from the folks on this channel and other channels that have been, outraged at the lack of justice for the Markells is really holding their feet to the fire. And I think they realize, yeah, there is the evidence there, and we can go after Wendy next. So I think that's going to happen. And as we all look forward to it, I mean, it's sort of like Wendy's a public enemy number one of all these true crime followers, and of Florida, and perhaps the nation as well. I mean, what part of a murder team gets away with 10 years of doing something when you have all this evidence that's been there for most of the last 10 years? Mr. Betsy is saying Wendy seems to have had a lawyer on retainer for all these trials. How does a lawyer charge for that many years or only when they're needed in courtroom? Well, I'm sure what he probably did is had a retainer amount. Let's say he maybe had $25,000 retainer. Then he's billing maybe $800 or 1,000 or $1,200 an hour every time she calls up. That's going to be coming down off the retainer. And if the retainer maybe drops down to 10,000 or 5,000 or 1,000 or something like that, then she's got to drop in another 25. But I do think that when she actually was charged with murder, that's when I think Rajram did a flat fee. All the indications are he was hired as a flat fee, because if it was an hourly basis, he would have like from my experience, I noticed that attorneys would be doing depositions of any and every possible witness. So they did a bunch of flurry of depositions here lately. I think that was mostly due to um, Alex Morris saying, "Hey, we got to do some depositions to try to get some kind of impeachment type evidence on some of these witnesses." Or like they also did a deposition for Sergeant Corbett, and interviewing Sergeant Corbett, they try to show that some of the stuff he did was to help was based on what prosecution asked, and so they're trying to make some hay about that. But really, they're just grasping at straws. CH is asking, does Rashbaum have to acknowledge that Charlie is guilty of murder, or only that he was convicted? Can he say that Charlie was wrongfully convicted? I would say that it's going to come out that he was convicted. What means and methods they do that? I think that I don't want to give them any ideas of what I think would be more helpful. In the end, nothing is really helpful. I think the way Charlie comes across, and he's going to be in his prison uniform, and maybe Leon County Jail at the time remains to be seen. But I don't think he's going to be dressed up in a suit or anything like that. It's possible they could ask for that, but I would say that the judge hopefully would deny that if that was like a motion in limine sealed request. And in any event, I think the jury's going to see right through that. And one of the things also I can tell you is um, they're told not to look at any outside information, but I can tell you most jurors on any of these cases they do Google the defendant's names and key witnesses, so they're going to see exactly what happened, and they'll probably look at some YouTube channels as well. So, like I say, they're not going to admit that if they're. It's just human nature. I know folks have done that. It's just human nature. You're curious about what the allegations are and some of the backdrop and what's out there on the public domain about these characters. I'm so tired of saying any thoughts on what Wendy Adelson's ex-friend will testify to. I'm not sure about that. I would say that it's going to be something to impeach her. I would say probably the most likely thing it's going to be is things involving like her desire to get out of Tallahassee. Keep in mind, she told the court she liked Tallahassee, was looking to stabilize herself there, was looking for a house. I think all that was a ruse to make it look like she wasn't involved in planning a murder. She was thinking about it that strategically and how this is going to look for me. So I better look like I'm house shopping, that kind of thing. So I could see a friend being a great person to call to expose that as being a big scam. Because think about it, if she didn't tell her friends that she's that she hates Tallahassee so much, and then she's complaining about it all the time to Jeff Lacasse. Or else let's say maybe she does. Maybe it was one friend that she did tell her that she hated Tallahassee so much. But I think as a general rule, we've not seen any indicators that she was talking to a lot of people about either loving or hating Tallahassee. So I think that remains to be flushed out. So I suppose that's maybe what this is about. And there's other things as well she could be impeached on. Maybe things that she admitted to. Think about anything Wendy said to somebody can be that's helpful for the prosecution could be admitted as an admission by a party opponent under the rules of evidence. So yeah, good question. PLD is asking, do you notice Donna mouthing YouTuber to Rashbaum before the hearing started? Apparently, she was looking at Patty Wilson from Patty's Playhouse channel. The defense is watching. Yeah, that's I think I heard about that, and I do know I did see something about that. Patty Wilson was there, so yeah, that's something that I did not see per se, but I heard about it. And Marta Cubalo is asking, I think the detectives have an eye on Wendy that she moved, being that she moved to Texas, or is that another jurisdiction that where she's not followed? Donna would have fled if it wasn't for Scott calling. Yeah, Donna would have escaped the country if it wasn't for that Scott. I forget his name off the top of my head. The friend of Charlie that had the connections in Vietnam for them to go to. I think yeah, they would have been in Vietnam. It probably would have never nabbed him and extradited these Adelsons. So I do think that they are having some kind of enhanced visibility on what Wendy's whereabouts are and what she's up to. I think she will still testify. She's not going to flee before she's supposed to testify. But the kind of pressure that's building up on her, where she's going to be testifying against her mom, has got to be pretty serious. Oh, there it is, Scott Radius. Yeah. So thanks for adding that. So I think the pressure on her is going to be she's going to be more rattled, and she knows she's going to get rattled even more so this next time by Georgia or maybe even Sarah, as we've been talking about. Sarah would probably be a better one to cross Sam in Georgia, just to throw her off her game. She sort of feels comfortable with Georgia's questions, although not so much from the last proceeding. So I do think that Sarah is going to rattle her and get more out of her if they let Sarah do it. Yank Canuck is asking what happens if Alex and Dan disagree on something. Well, lead counsel ultimately prevails, and if there's a dispute on themselves, maybe they'll go to the client and say, "Hey, this is what we have a dispute on. What do you think?" But normally, the only thing that really matters for a criminal defendant, the thing they get to elect under the Constitution in case law is really whether they want to plead guilty or not, whether they want to testify or not on the actual trial, and also whether they want to testify or not on sentencing. And other than those three main decisions, the all the other legal decisions, what witnesses call, what theory to use, how to the strategize of the theory through witnesses, either through impeachment or through direct examination of your own witnesses. So all these kind of strategic tactical decisions are solely made by the lawyer because after all these kind of decisions the client doesn't have any experience on. And I say the biggest fool for a client is somebody that's representing themselves, and that even goes for lawyers for that as well. So I do think that ultimately Dan's probably going to make the call, and in any event, he's the one that's got years of history with Donna, and this Alex guy is a newcomer, so he's not going to win out on any argument. But if the Alex has a good argument to make to Dan, I think Dan will probably listen to him. I do think that Alex is probably more technically capable as a lawyer to come up with these motions. After all, look at the difference in motions from the last proceeding. This one, you do have more motions, and I think that's the Alex effect. Ryan B is asking, do I think Georgia made the hot Mike Wendy comment to set Wendy in motion to try to flee the country and subsequently get caught like her mom? Yeah, I think that I don't think that she would necessarily do that, but that's an interesting comment. It's I guess it's possible. Anything's possible, and so yeah, that hot mic moment. Uh, maybe she does want her to try to run, and so they get that flee effort, her trying to flee the country out there, and they can arrest her ahead of time. That could be very strategic. I just don't see I don't see George as being that strategic and setup minded. So in any event, it'd be sort of a good thing because maybe that is getting back to Wendy and her lawyers about her muttering Wendy under her breath 3 times. Uh, Liz Elwood, you're asking from Northern Ireland whether Wendy can refuse to testify. Well, she can refuse to testify, but then she's going to be put immediately arrested and handcuffed and stuck in the jail cell until she's willing to testify. So I would say that I don't think she's willing to do that. I think she is going to testify, no matter how cringeworthy it is, where she's going to have to get up there and just talk lie after lie after lie like she's been doing. And they got a lot more evidence against her, and it's going to be she's really going to she may fold and cave in and start crying on the stand and acting like in hysterics or something. So I think that they need to push her a lot harder than they have before, and I think that we're going to see the positive results from that. Jen Rank is saying, is the one by one prosecution method the preferred method for wealthy connected criminals as it tends to drain their assets and wear them down? I'm not. As I've said before, Jen, you must not be following this channel for that long a period because I've been saying from day one they should have arrested either all these players together or you do a very short delay before you actually charge these other Adelsons. For example, charge one month and then charge the other one a couple months later. At most, a 6 month delay. But you don't wait until you actually get a conviction because there's too much time built in between, and you're letting these criminals walk the street. As a prosecutor, one of my goals is to hurry up, process the information, size up the evidence, and then go forward and get it presented to a jury when in a rapid fashion. But look at the Matsuri tape. They waited 6 years to get an enhancement when you really didn't even need that. So I think the prosecution had, as I've said, a lack of initiative, lack of courage, lack of motivation, lack of self confidence, and lack of ability to maybe size up the evidence, as well as probably the biggest thing they had political connections, the Adelsons, that was able to keep them from being arrested. So I don't think this has anything to do with the wealthy. I think they did try they tried the hitman team first initially, and they got one of them as a hung jury with Katie McBanois. I think that made them even more gun shy instead of like making them realize, hey, we need to tee up more of these folks together. It's more judicial economy, but that was a really unique situation because you got a juror that held out because they didn't want to send the kids away without having either parent. Both of them would have been convicted for life without parole. So I think that in the end, this has worked out better. I mean, in the sense that you do get additional information that comes out some years later, but the downside of it is that you could also have unavailability of witnesses. If a key witness is unavailable to do whatever, that could be you're at large risk for that. So waiting 10 years is way too long. But like I say, I think it's not. I think they also were afraid the fact that they'd bring in some super powerful lawyers that could embarrass them on the YouTube world. Excuse me. So I think all those factors played into it, but I think the confidence at all time high now. Georgia and Sarah, if they zero in, they're going to be able to take all these Florida Adelsons down. They just need to be getting the permission from their boss Jack Campbell to do it. Letterman's girls asking, is there a chance Wendy could find out through her team if and when there's a warrant out for arrest? I don't. I mean, they could let her attorney know, hey, we have a warrant process. Does she want to turn herself in? But I think with Wendy, they're probably not going to do that. I think they're just going to surprise her. They're going to stake her out and they're going to nab her when she least expects it. But she should be looking over her shoulder because it's coming down the pike pretty soon after she testifies. Vertus G is asking, are Charlie, Don, and Rashma allowed to prepare for trial together on a Zoom call? And if Charlie's calling in from South Dakota and he's got a speakerphone, I wouldn't think it's necessarily on Zoom, but that possibly could happen. And if we will never know, but that could be a possibility. I think it's a bad strategy to use. Charlie's helping his mom strategize, testify, and present a defense. I think, yeah, it sounds pretty ridiculous. You wouldn't want to have a convicted murderer telling you how to beat the conviction that you're facing. So who knows? It probably is happening. But I think if he's on an attorney call with Donna and Charlie happens to call on his other line, maybe he can do a conference call if he's got more than one phone, or he can do a Zoom and then show a video screen of the call. So anyway, there's multiple methods he could do that. And if it's attorney call, they're not listening in from the jail or from the prison. So yeah, he could get away with that. I would estimate. Lisa Moan is asking if by chance there's a hung jury, does that hold up the rest of Wendy? I mean, if you're afraid of not having that conviction under your belt, then that could possibly delay it until they get another effort to retry Donna and then get a conviction. So, but there's not going to be a hung jury. So I'm confident if they have their A game on and they screen out the right folks that shouldn't be on there, they're gonna get a seated jury that is able to convict these folks. And I think it'll be a quick conviction like it was for Charlie. Okay, Tanya Bluebell saying it's more of a comment when she watched the first State Line episode years ago. You believe Wendy, her being honest during the police interview made it seem like she wanted answers too. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I guess you saying you believed her that time and not now. But if you, the more you look at her interview with Detective Ice, the more you'll see and conclude that she did not act the right way. Just finding out this information, she was not in a in a state of shock. She was not in a state of denial. She was just too accommodating, too much having answers, too ready to point the fingers. She sort of evolved in her statements about Dan having any enemies, and then that sort of evolved over time. And so it's if you go to the indicators list that John and I produced soon after we started this channel, you'll see that indeed, there are many indicators out there, and we just threw that one together. That was pretty fast. So the bottom line is there's probably close to 200 indicators. So, and a lot of those are also taken from Detective Isom's interviews. So there's enough there to convict if you haven't changed your mind by now. Jill Argos is saying you're very confused why the state would call Charlie if all he would say is the same silly story. Well, his story was so preposterous and ludicrous that they want him as sort of a on the bench, and maybe they'll call him in a rebuttal in case Donna tries to say something different than Charlie. You definitely need him there, and after all, whatever he says, he's going to be looking really bad. If you have the guilt by association between mother and son, and her son's a convicted murderer, he helped hire the hitman, and then you have Donna acting the way she did, acting so integrally involved in this murder plot, then having Charlie there is definitely going to help lower the bar for what kind of testimony you need to seal the deal and get her convicted as well. So at a minimum, you need to call him in a rebuttal. But they may decide to call him in case in chief, but don't know yet. It all depends on their individual decisions on how they want to prove up the case. Rosemary Romero is asking, why would Judge Everett grant Rashomon's most about Corbett being an expert when Judge Everett allowed him to testify as an expert in Charlie's trial and Rashomon never objected to his testimony? Well, but he also wasn't admitted as an expert in the first trial. The state never attempted to do that. So it's sort of like it's a case of first impression about him being an expert or not. It sounds like he's going to be an expert, just not in certain things that are in the summary. So in any event, it's just not. It wasn't really clear from the record exactly what kind of things are going to come in and come out with Sergeant Corbett. But I think in the end, the all the main guts of the key testimony he has will be brought forth, and there's going to be enough there to definitely get a conviction. Rabbit Inc. is saying, do you think Donna must testify? How she might avoid and have a strategy that allows her not to get on the stand? Um, I'm not going to advise the defense on what I think they must do to help themselves because this is a channel solely dedicated to justice for the Markells. On this particular case, I will be covering some other cases and have touched on a couple one segment episodes that John and I covered. But in the end, I would say that I don't want to help them testify. I do think that she probably will testify. I'm not saying whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm going to say that anytime you get a Florida Adelson on the witness stand, good things happen for justice for the Markells. So I'll just leave it at that. Veronica Schneider is asking, why do the partners at Marcus Neiman Rashomon let Daniel Rashomon damage the firm reputation with unwinnable cases and weak defense strategies? If I were a potential client, I'd think twice about hiring them. Well, I would say that I'm not, just because you have a case that's not winnable. In the end, I think the people forget about who represented Donna, and there's other cases that there's always a need for other attorneys out there, and maybe people don't look at it as whether they win or lost a case that was in the that's getting such national worldwide attention as this case. So in the end, do you think they're really gonna somebody's gonna hire him is actually gonna be looking at how he performed in this trial? I doubt it. I don't think most criminals follow true crime. If they did, they wouldn't be committing the crimes. So I think um, I think none of that's gonna reach any potential client. And I guess if they did a Google search on them, I guess maybe some of that stuff could come up. But anyway, I just think they go by word of mouth more than anything in hiring folks. Tracy H is asking if Wendy's arrested, where do you think the boys will go? Will they be allowed to go to the Markells? That's really an issue that the state would get involved in. I know there's relatives that are in the Austin area that are tied to the Adelson, so maybe they initially go with them. But ultimately, it's going to be a state court decision. It's not something that prosecutors get involved in. So that's not something I'm really want to speculate. And there could be more than one family member that wants to step up and say I'm willing to take custody of them. And so in any event, New York Patriot lady is asking what was Wendy's purpose for driving Jeff by Dan's house hundreds of times, according to Jeff Lacasse. Well, I don't think he literally meant hundreds of times, but if you think about it, both Jeff Lacasse and Katie McManawat were set up to be the fall people and recruited to help out in this murder. And obviously, Jeff Lacasse was too honorable a person. There's no way this is anything in his realm of possibility. And so, if he's not going to be a part of the conspirator team, he basically was going to be the fall guy. So, if he set out during the months of dating to be the fall guy, of course he's going to drive by the house and make it look like, hey, this is sort of like a routine thing. And maybe it was just a matter of the dropping off the boys, picking them up, kind of thing. So maybe that's was some of it. But to say you're running errands if it's not involving picking up the boys, I don't know if that question's been asked. Because why would you go all the way out of the way if it didn't have anything to do with picking up the boys or dropping them off? So I think like many questions that get asked in proceedings, you don't ask enough detailed questions to really know the ground truth of the matter. So I don't think we have the ground truth on really what kind of situations did arise where they would drive by Dan's house. So I don't think we really know the ground truth on that. Doug Farley's asking, will Dan Rashomon make considerable more amount of money in this case than Alex Morris? Donna is putting her eggs in the wrong basket. I would just say that Rashomon's probably getting the biggest chunk of the pie. I think he's probably getting like close to $1 million, and I think maybe Alex Morris, being Tallahassee, probably was willing to go for maybe half that or so. But in any event, it's a very expensive defense team, and in the end, it's not going to matter because Donna will get convicted. Texas Law Lover is saying, how can Donna explain away the checks written to Katie McManwa? I'm not going to tell her how to explain it away because that'd be helping the defense. So I can just tell you that it's a data point indicating Donna's involvement. The checks were a bunch of them were serially entered, so it also made it look suspect that she wasn't actually doing work. Because who would write a whole bunch of sequential checks in order and date them, unless they didn't really use the checks that much. But I'd be looking at the check writing pattern and stuff like that as well. Those kind of details haven't come up, but I think it is definitely indicating, there should have been a conversation. Well, who am I writing this check out to, and what am I giving them money for? And after all, there was she would have known who Katie was as being a girlfriend. So it's not the only piece of evidence, but it's another data point indicating that she definitely was involved in this murder. Okay, and then we have I'm so tired saying what jail calls can they use? Why none with Charlie Adelson? Like I've already addressed that sort of earlier tonight. Charlie Adelson calls are they're more prejudicial than probative as to their guilt. So, a lot of stuff he's saying was questioning why Wendy would be driving by the Dan Markel house so soon after the murder happened. So he basically was making it look like Wendy's to blame for why he's convicted and that kind of stuff. So it's not so much a issue about an indicator how Donna was guilty and a part of this. So I think that's probably more prejudicial and probative, and I think that's why the state just is agreeing not to bring that out. So, and I think that's the right decision by the state. You don't want to start inflaming the jury with Charlie trashing the Tallahassee locals. So anyway, Amanda Jane saying, can Harvey still be labeled as an unindicted co-conspirator eventually? That's something that he's not been labeled yet, and hopefully that's going to happen soon. I think they'll do that maybe in motions uh, proceedings sometime in Wendy's arrest, and hopefully they'll arrest them both together. But so far that hasn't happened yet. But I think it will happen here before the end of the year. It better happen because otherwise they're not doing justice to Markel's. Lisa Mana is asking, I still want to know how it took Wendy only 2 minutes to park, converse with the ABC liquor guy, and then search and pay for the bourbon record show is just a few minutes. That's something that Detective Isom never did is, pull any videotape of that, how long she was there, what she was doing there. I mean, they got general cell phone type data, but yeah, of her in the ABC liquor store and stuff like that. I mean, they never really found her to be a suspect until later. So that sort of hurt because obviously the evidence wouldn't have been around after a couple days or a couple weeks, if that. Detective Machin is saying, "Why haven't we heard anything from Wendy's lunch dates?" I think that those folks have already been interviewed, and they maybe didn't have a whole lot to add. But even if they said something maybe that was incriminating Wendy, they don't want to go down that kind of detail when it really has to do with Wendy and not as much having to do with the other Florida Adelsons. So I do think you know we would probably find something if you ask enough probing question. There'd be something incriminating there. But a lot of times, well, from my many thousands of cases I've worked on, a lot of times you see cases where just the right question is not asked by the attorneys. Attorneys tend to gloss over a lot of stuff. They miss a lot of stuff. Same with investigators, and they just don't think of asking the right question that can blow open the whole case. So I've seen that many times, and so that could be an issue there as well on those lunch dates she had. Okay, Lizzie Elwood is saying, "Do I think Katie will remember a lot more this time?" I think she'll have a little bit more. I don't think she'll have a lot more, but what she does say, like she did last time, I think would be definitely a benefit to the prosecution, and it'll help sink Donna for sure. Jan is asking, "Can I explain the concept of a joint defense? I don't understand how calls between Charlie and Donna may be privileged. Could they be furthering the conspiracy cover up?" Yeah, like I said before tonight, I don't understand how the joint defense basically they're trying to say like communication between them is sort of like part of the defense team, and if it's part of the defense team, it's considered privileged, should be under the attorney client um, attorney client calling and not the defense attorney to client calling. And so anyway, some kind of argument like that, but in the end, like I say, I think it's not really probative enough to overcome the prejudicial effect. So um, and I think that the cover up was a part of how they're saying it, but like I say, it's too prejudicial with him so much trash in Tallahassee that it's just too risky. You don't want to risk having this reverse on appeal by basically having this trial be uh, a endless stream of Charlie bashing Tallahassee jurors and Donna agreeing with him. So all right, next we have Mr. Betsy saying, "Why does Donna get to wear civilian clothes for a trial or still in prison uniform?" No, I can tell you across the United States, you'll never see a defendant on a jury trial be in anything but civilian street clothes. They don't want to have them look like they're guilty and let the jurors think that, hey, they're already there, locked up for a while pending trial. Why don't we just keep them there? It'd be very prejudicial. So, no defendants in America are ever are wearing any kind of jail or prison outfits. Tracy H is asking if Charlie's in protective custody, will he have special accommodations while he is back in Florida to testify? I think he's going to be isolated in a cell. I don't think they want to risk him having any connection or contact with other cellmates. I think that it's just too risky, and maybe something could happen. He could get in a fight or something, or maybe he's beat up and whatnot. So I think they're going to isolate him where he's in his own individual cell and not in a group cell with others that have protective custody. And protective custody is a difference in the jail than it is in the state prisons. So I like I say, I think that in the end, what he's going to do is be more isolated than anything, and he's not going to have a lot of contact with anybody outside of lawyers. CH is asking, can defendants dye their hair before trial? Is that allowed in jail? She looks rough. That's something that it could come up if the defense counsel wanted to ask the court's permission. I've not seen that be an issue before. And so maybe defense strategy is they want to have her look as old as possible, as rough as possible, as you say. So don't know, but that is a possibility where they could ask for that. She could be looking a lot different than she has in these hearings where there's not a jury there present to have any negative inferences from seeing her that way. All right, next from PC, you're asking, did Wendy's receive some kind of immunity? So the kind of immunity she received was not any kind of negotiated immunity by her lawyers and the prosecutors. It's under a Florida statute that says basically if you're subpoenaed by the prosecution, not the defense, only the prosecution on a criminal case, you basically have immunity from anything you say being used against you or anything you say that's helpful to discover further on derivative use information that could be used against you to prosecute you. You basically have a barrier, a wall around you, a bubble around you that nothing can be pierced and they can't come after you unless you lie or they've otherwise independently discovered that and they can show to the judge in case it's challenged that all this we knew ahead of time, all this was discovered ahead of time and documented ahead of time, and there's no way any of this was used against her. So that's the kind of immunity she received. And any witness that's like I say subpoenaed by the prosecutors, they confer that same kind of immunity on them. So in the end, Wendy didn't want to testify unless she was subpoenaed. So I think she definitely was wanting some kind of protection from that. But with all the lies that were said, I would say, especially this last trial, I would be very disappointed if the state does not charge her with perjury in a murder case, which carries, I believe, up to 30 years in prison. Not that she would get that, but it is a pretty serious offense. And for somebody to tell as many falsehoods as she did in a murder case and not be prosecuted, that's a real shocker. Uh, I saw something about a practice test with Donna, 95%. Like Charlie, that was a good one. Okay, Timothy Swire is saying, has a silent brother done any press to date? No, there's nothing. Oh, I do think he was on some kind of podcast where he's talking about how how Donna interfered with his life and his marriage and stuff like that, and a fiance. So I think in the end, that's the only thing we've seen. I can't remember where we see that out. Some of you folks would know that off the top of your head better than me. So please add that to the comments if you know. Amy Deanna was saying, what would happen, God forbid, or for future trials if something were to happen to a key witness such as Jeff Cass? It's taking so long, you never know the future. Past testimony, depos. Yeah, unless they depose somebody and they don't show up for trial, that testimony is forever gone. If a witness dies or is in a coma or something or can't make it to the court for whatever reason, if you haven't deposed that person, then yeah, their testimony is gone and never to be used again. You can't backdoor it in by showing videotape of other testimony, other trials, or other interviews with Detective Isom or other detectives there at Florida, the Tallahassee Police Department. So basically, that I think that that is one of the downsides, and I've mentioned that before. It's like don't assume all your witnesses are available if you're going to string a case out 10 years. Yeah, you might get some other digital evidence. There might be some better forensic extraction software or whatnot, but in the end, you still need live body witnesses and life is fragile. You never know when something can happen. But just we just got to trust and pray that Jeff Cass is good and all these other key witnesses, nothing happens to him. Then we have Mel von Monkers is saying Robert Adelson was featured on Over My Dead Body channel stream a few years ago. Okay, that's the one that I had heard. So yes, thank you for pointing that out. I don't have the link to that, but if somebody could post a link, that would be great. Debbie M is asking, will there be a point that all Adelsons will be in the courtroom at the same time? I don't think so because if you think about it, um, Wendy's not going to be there. Wendy will do everything to avoid the courtroom. So I don't think she's going to be in the courtroom when Harvey's there, and so she'll be there when Donna and Harvey, which are her parents, are there. Harvey being a spectator. So I think that's the closest we'll see is those three together. But Charlie added to that as well. And definitely Rob's not going to be in the same courtroom as those other guys. So he's just going to be there as a witness. So maybe he'll only see his mom and dad. But these other siblings are not going to see each other unless Wendy's arrested in her trial. Then, of course, you have Charlie there. And you'll have Donna maybe testifying as well. So it's not going to be all of them together. And most of them are going to be convicted in handcuffs if it does happen. PLD is asking, why would Charlie's return date to South Dakota be November? I think what they do is they get him here early and set a late date, and assuming the trial's not over with quick enough, then they're going to say, okay, we're moving up the shipment date. So I think that's all that means. I wouldn't read much into that. Okay, WM's asking if Donna gets upset on stand and out of control, what would Judge ever do? Well, I don't think she's gonna get too fiery where Judge Everett has to intervene. If she gets that upset, the judge has to intervene. I mean, she's gonna go down that much faster, and I think they're gonna be doing their best to try to keep her under control. But that's probably a really tough task to do, and I think they're not going to do that great a job of it. But yeah, you push the right buttons on Donna. Yeah, she could go into freak out mode on the witness box. Donna's asking, is Jeff Lacasse on the list to testify? Yeah, he's as I've said, the key witness to this whole case. I mean, there's others that are absolutely critical, like Sergeant Corbett, but I say Jeff Lacasse for the psychology background and showing how Wendy was a part of this as well, and how if Wendy was a part of this, then obviously that means Donna was a part of it, and if Donna was a part of it, then obviously that means Charlie's a part of it, and we know Charlie's already convicted. So it just sort of throw those folks all together in a really tight knit conspiracy group that also includes Harvey. Nito Ceramics is saying hello from Toronto, and you're asking, do I think Donna's taking sedatives? He's saying, I think she's on something. I'm not sure exactly what. I said Xanax maybe the last time, but not sure exactly. But yeah, she looked really. Her eyes were really bizarre this last proceeding, and but who knows? Who knows what they may be trying to do to sedate her so she doesn't have any outbursts. But that's possible. Audrey Jordan saying, can Wendy throw herself in the mercy court and get some leniency if she comes forward before her arrest? Well, if she wants to negotiate a plea and try to strike like a 20-year deal or something like that, but I just don't see that happening. I think like any Adelson, like most rich people, they think money can buy their ticket out of any kind of jam. So maybe her mother needs to be convicted first before she would even think about it. But I just don't see her ever agreeing to plead anything. When Rogers asking, just wondering your thoughts about if Wendy's attorneys are preparing her for a possible arrest, or if they blow in smoke like Daniel Rashomon does with Charlie. That's I don't. I think that they're probably being more straight up with her, and her attorney's John Laurel, and I think the firm also John Laurel has a firm. I think if anyone she's talking to in that firm are probably saying, yeah, you could be arrested any day now. So I do think that. I think they're probably warning her, and they're probably preparing her to, why don't you give us a larger retainer fee right now in case you can't get to us right away. So maybe they're going to ask for another, 100,000 or something like that up front, so they don't have to wait weeks before she could maybe have the money wired to them or sent to them while she's in jail. Georgia Ross is saying, is this the first time Charlie will see his mom? Yeah, unless it's some kind of Zoom thing, face to face, it's the first time Charlie would see his mom. I mean, like I said, we don't know if he's actually going to be testifying or not. But if he does, yeah, that's going to be the first time he has face to face viewing of his mom and vice versa. Okay, Vertus G is saying, so if you're subpoenaed and refuse to testify, you're jailed. Yeah, until you cooperate. Would they even bring Charlie down if he refused to testify? Do they ask him before bringing him down? I don't think they're going to ask him. I think they're going to wait till the moment if they decide to bring him on, and then if he tries to refuse at that point, I don't think Charlie's going to refuse. I think Charlie likes to be heard, and I like he thinks that his defense story of what happened to him is a such a wonderful, truthful story that people should just believe it because it's coming from his mouth. But in the end, we all know how ridiculous and just outright ludicrous, crazy his story is. Melvin Bonker's asking is Rashbaum said the defense could take 2 days. Who do I think the defense will call? What I covered over a number of the defense witnesses that they'll could call. I think someone they may try to call, but I think the prosecution does enough to depose them and ask enough probing questions. I think a lot of those witnesses will drop off, and so I think that I think in the end it will be probably less than a day, and maybe just a half a day, if not just 2 hours. So I think they're just doing a lot of puffery at this point. But if the prosecution does their homework, they should be able to neutralize these witnesses in short order. I just want to say something about. I saw some question here about psychotropic drugs. That they won't give Xanax or any kind of benzos to folks in jail, but they'll give psychotropic drugs. Psychotropic drugs are like antipsychotic type drugs, like Seroquel. On those can seriously mess people up as well. It's like all those things are really bad, and people aren't asking normal. So in any event, I would say that she can be given some kind of drugs. I don't know the exact rules, but she definitely looks like she's on drugs. And from what I'm picking up on the way the Leon County Jail is, certain meds can be given to help facilitate a compliant defendant in court. Okay, you heard from Keela Davila. You're asking, will Katie, Don, and Wendy serve their time in the same prison? No, they'd always split them up. They're not going to let them serve the same prison. So they'll be definitely split up. And maybe, if it's a problem, they don't end up living in prisons, and maybe one of them be shipped out. But I don't think you're ever going to see them in the same prison. Tracy H is saying, "Do you know how the Markells are holding up? This has been a very long road for them, and one that I hope ends soon." Yeah, I mean, unless you get the other Florida Adelsons arrested and convicted, I mean, it's really upsetting. I would say for them, I think they're doing amazingly well. I think they speak with such grace and dignity, and they speak with don't speak with any amount of hate in their hearts towards the murdering Adelsons, but my gosh, it's like for them to be this patient and wait this long. Um, we got to see more arrests, and we need to see them happen fast. Otherwise, you can just really have a broken heart thinking how these folks are walking around, and no justice happened yet for half the murdering Adelson clan. Yes, John will be there at the trial. I think the first couple days he won't be there, but after that he will be. And I intend to cover the live stream for this as well. I think that you'll be seeing. I'll try to cover most all the trial. I may not cover all of the first day or portion of first day. If I don't, am not able to do a live stream of the day trial proceedings, then I'll do at least a night recap on what was going on and go from there. But I do want to cover most of the trial and live stream it all from start to finish. And not sure if I'll be able to make the trial at all to join John like I did for Charlie's, but remains to be seen. Lisa Mon is saying, can Wendy use her current lawyer since she is now out of state? Well, if she's charged, it's going to be in Florida, and her attorney's licensed in Florida. So yeah, she would use the same attorney if he wanted to be hired on as actual one defending her at trial, at the jury trial. So yeah, he definitely could be. She's not going to be tried in Texas. Bugs Bunny brother saying, if a person was on a jury that Alex was a defense attorney, would that exclude them from being able to be chosen for this jury? I don't. I mean, it's not per se. I think they'd ask questions like, "What was your opinion of how I performed?" If I'm Morris, I'm going to be asking them, "Okay, I recognize you from another trial. Can you tell me your thoughts on how I did as an advocate? Did you think I was truthful?" Those kind of questions. You want to know if the person thought you're credible and a straight broker of information and a trustworthy advocate. If he said bad things about Alex Morris, then obviously he's going to get booted. Norla Vine is saying, "Will Wendy hire Rashman if she's charged?" Stupid question, but no one ever knows. I don't think Wendy would. I think she's going to try to go with John Lauro or somebody like him. And so, no, I think she's probably hearing how Rashman's done a very bad job, and he's despite the fact he's not had a whole lot to work with, he's just hard to listen to and doesn't make a lot of sense and wastes a lot of time. So in the end, I don't see her being a lawyer would hire somebody like Rashbaum. Serendipity Smiles is asking, do I think Charlie and Donna will both start crying for dramatic effects on the jury? Charlie would not cry in front of a jury. Donna at different times might be, but I think she's gonna be um, probably on too much medication to really have any kind of sense of feeling and emotions that way. Sarasota saying, can inmates watch the trial in the clink, or is court TV banned in jails too much of a trigger? I don't know what the different jail standards are. I think that I mean, if I had it my way, there would not be any TV in prisons for the prisoners to enjoy. But in the end, don't know if that would be allowed. Probably not. My guess is probably not. True crime showing other murders and whatnot is not going to be shown in prison. So I think they sanitize the uh, channel selections that way. Carrie Retchless is saying, can you tell us again why Donna was not at Charlie's trial? Well, she was not called as a witness and she didn't want to show up. I think because she's afraid of getting arrested. I think her and Harvey were so afraid of getting arrested, they would not even show up for their own son's murder trial. So yeah, that shows you how scared they are. And if they weren't guilty, then they obviously would have been there. But they knew there's enough information out there to convict them, and that's why she decided to run. It's just sad it's taking this many years to arrest her, and Harvey's still out running the streets as well. Unreal. Okay, Detective Machin is saying, "Will the Markel's file a civil suit? Everything that Markel's own is pretty much in trust. So if you have everything in trust, that's not you can't pierce that. So you're not really going to cover anything. You have to pay a high retainer for attorney fees to go after them. And if you can't find any assets and everything's protected that way, then what's the point?" Okay, Tammy's saying she heard that true crime is one of the most watched TV channels in prison. I think it depends what prison you're at. So different prisons have different rules, but not I've not been tracking that. Janice saying if it helps Donna's defense for Charlie to testify, but it hurts his own appeal, who provides him with legal advice? Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, ultimately, you got a conflicted lawyer there, so I think Charlie's going to try to help himself, and he's thinking he's going to say the same thing he did in his own trial to try to help his mom. So I don't think you're going to say it's going to hurt his chance of appeal, but if they get any kind of mission on him or something like that, potentially it could hurt his case. But in the end, I mean, it's just sort of a convoluted mess with conflicted counsel. So in the end, I don't think it's gonna affect his appeal at all. So we have Jen Rank saying, "Do you think George and Sarah are carefully selecting their questions of Wendy to ensure it doesn't interfere with their trial? How would this work out in terms of what information can be used?" I do think that, and I've said it before Charlie's trial. I think that they should have been more aggressive with her in the previous proceedings. They were more aggressive in this proceeding. I think they should still ratchet up some of the questions that they do want to maybe save for trial. But really, there's so much there they could cover for a couple days that I think they're going to ratchet up more this time. And all the information could be used because basically, if she's lying pretty much nonstop, so all the information could be used to basically uh, be charging her with perjury, and then that kind of information would come out at that in that presentation of evidence. Terry's saying, "How does this murder distinguish itself compared to your experience of other murderous people?" I would say that the folks, the murder cases I've been associated with, you don't have this kind people with this kind of money. They're doing this kind of heinous, cutthroat, evil behavior. So, and more or less, the most of the murders happen with a shorter time frame between the idea to murder somebody and to execute it. And so things happen, events move really fast, and you got a gun involved, and before you know it, somebody's dead on the ground. So you got people with hot heads, or they're under the influence of some kind of alcohol or drug, and bad things happen and so fast, right? So I think this one is so premeditatedly um, worked up for over a year that it's just really bizarre how these people thought they could get away with this. And I think part of it was that fact they thought their level of knowledge and experience of how politicians can help them from being prosecuted, as well as how they can outsmart the knuckleheaded type law enforcement at Tallahassee Police Department that they didn't respect, and so they figured they could get away with it, and obviously that wasn't the case. That Tallahassee Police Department did a pretty good job initially. They got snookered by Wendy, I would say, for the first year and a half or so, but in the end, eventually, the evidence eventually led them to believe, yeah, we need to take a look at Wendy, and that's why she's an unindicted co-conspirator at this point. So she will be charged here, like I say, before the end of the year, by my estimation, and they have a good case to get her convicted, and I think they'll be able to accomplish that no problem. Gianna is saying, "What is your gut feeling about the Holocaust ring? Do you think Wendy's keeping it out of spite, or do you think she's gotten rid of it?" Boy, that's anyone's guess on that. I think if she hates the Adelsons that much, that maybe I don't want to say, I guess, who knows, and I don't want to upset the Markells by saying something that, she must have, like, damaged it or crushed it and threw it away or something like that, or sold it. I mean, I don't know, and I don't want to really speculate on that, but I think, if you're going to take a ring like that and do dispose of it or sell it, it's like, that's one of the things, I was just, thinking of recently, is that's never been asked on the witness stand. Where is that ring, right? Why isn't Georgia asking her that on the witness stand? Hey, can you tell us where the Holocaust ring is? That would be a good question to ask. And what's she going to answer? So jury's going to see right through that. So hopefully that'll be a question they ask of this upcoming jury for Donna's trial. CH is saying, what do I think of the judge overall? I think Judge Everett is really a classy guy. I think he's a great judge. I'd love to practice in front of him. He's fair. He's just. He has the right judicial temperament. He's not a hothead. He's not mean to the attorneys. Very, very, very. I mean, he's like a perfect textbook judge you want to see out of, like, Central Casting and stuff like that. So, how can you not like a judge like that? I don't like I say I don't agree with all of his rulings necessarily, but I don't. I think in the end he's made some adjustments, and he does the right thing. So, and no judge am I ever going to see eye to eye in all their rulings either. But I would say, he's a straight shooter, and that's what you want from a judge. He's not rooting for one side or the other. I've seen that happen many times, and he's all about due process and justice, and he wants to make sure the defendants get a fair trial. And so I just think you couldn't have a better judge down there trying this case. Carol Mitchell's asking, do I think Rashbaum incessant sidebars are strategically disruptive? Yeah, I've said that before. I've seen attorneys that, when they're losing, I'm on a steamroll, crushing their witness, they suddenly throw up all these objections, just trying to give their witness time to try to recover, and throw up roadblocks and have to have sidebars and all that kind of garbage. So yeah, it can be a strategic move for another side if they feel like they're losing. But I do think, defense is supposed to object as appropriate. They don't want it to sit on their hands when they should be objecting, because you don't want to see somebody get convicted just because they had a lawyer that was asleep at the switch. That's not justice, and you're probably going to have to redo it again over. So you do want to have a zealous defense for anybody charged with any crime here in America. So not saying that at any point you shouldn't have that, but like I say, I'm not going to say anything to help defense, because we're all about justice for Markells here. John Winger's asking, will jury selection be rough? Your opinion? Well, I think a lot of the jury selection that could be, hard to answer questions for the jurors. We're not going to see that, because they're going to bring them back in a private room and individually ask those kind of questions. So I think the real generic kind of questions are what we're going to see by all the jurors, that will help sort of decide what framework to ask individual follow up questions. But I don't think it's going to be that rough. I think the jury selection is such a critical part of the trial, and I think that, as we've seen with the prosecution, they better try to size up the witnesses, the jurors properly, that are being examined, and make sure they don't pick somebody that has some kind of ulterior agenda. You're asking if I know if Amy Adler's on the witness list. I cannot remember off the top of my head. If somebody wants to jump in, I do see a question about the new 2020. Will it be worth your while? I was asked, I was called the other day by 2020, asked if I wanted to be on, and I told them, you can. They were still up in the air whether they were going to. There was other producers involved whether I'd be actually interviewed or not, but that remains to be seen. And so I probably will not be taking them up on that. So anyway. I'm so tired of saying if the DA is so out of it, can they say she's unfit? If Donna Adelson, sorry, I'm thinking district attorney, is so out of it, can they say she's unfit for trial or wouldn't understand what's going on? Well, there's two different things. Whether she's competent to stand trial, I don't think that's going to be the case. Either based on her age or any meds she's on, that's a really pretty high standard. And I don't think there's any psychologists or forensic MD that's going to say she's not, capable of standing trial. And then I think also the she's definitely not, insane at the time she committed the crime, so that's not going to be an issue either. Van F is saying, can Georgia question the conversation where Dan gave Donna advice about leaving the country? Is that bridge too far as paternity-client privilege? Well, it's because it's an open line that she was talking to other people. It's considered a waiver, even though Donna didn't know that the line was still going. She'd ended her call with Charlie. I just think, that, like I said before, having Dan be mentioned, and when she's talking about fleeing the country, it looks so bad as an attorney to the jury that if I was a prosecutor, I wouldn't want a jury seeing the fact that Dan could possibly be the Dan Rashbaum is representing her in court. It was the one that was talking about fleeing the country because it basically really makes Dan look bad, and it makes him look doesn't look like make him look like he's the most trustworthy attorney, and that could be basically setting up an ineffective assistant counsel type defense. So yeah, that's too much of a slippery slope. I don't think you want to go down that road if you bring up the word Dan. If you bring up the rest of it and just bleep out Dan, that I think that's totally relevant and admissible, and it would take away the prejudicial effect. Dr. Cancel is asking, well, when he testified in her own trial, I think that there's a good chance she would testify. I think all these Adelsons have such a crazy story that they think that they can talk their way out of it. So yeah, she probably would testify, most likely. And then Jay Cash is asking, could Isom have told Miami police to pick up Charlie the night of the shooting while Wendy was still at the interview? She already implicated him repeatedly. Why not drag Charlie into that night for interview? Well, I think the Miami Police Department is one thing to pick them up, yeah, but they're not the ones that are normally going to interview them. They didn't have enough questions to ask and that kind of stuff. So, and Charlie already invoked anyway. So, the first time law enforcement had a chance to, excuse me, I take that back. Charlie was never interviewed by the police or attempted to be interviewed by the police or questioned by them. So, he got away with it. So they sort of sat on their hands. They could have asked, but in the end, Charlie was already planning ahead of time to invoke and not cooperate. Pepper's asking if Donna accepts a plea deal, can she request a shorter sentence for Charlie? If there's a joint defense effort to try to negotiate all these deals out with the co-defendants, that could be a possibility. But in the end, I don't see Donna cutting a plea deal at all because she's, anything they're offered her is going to, in essence, still let her die in prison. So she thinks her best bet is to go for broke and go to the trial and get a life without parole because then she can so she'll have some friends still talk about how she got railroaded in Tallahassee and that she's innocent and she can try to save face that way. Jesus Lover's asking, do I think Rashbaum has taken a different approach to Donna's trial based on Charlie's complaints about the Wendy book, Wendy driving on Trescott and changing the Markel boy's last name? I think that's the influence of Alex Morris, not so much Rashbaum, but I think those two have sort of figure out what could we do differently, what was most damaging in Charlie's. There's a way we could try to neutralize and keep some of that evidence out. But in the end, I think it still should all come in and it's all going to result in the same end state of conviction. When Rogers asking, what are your thoughts on the visit that Wendy had allowed her boys the day before Charlie's arrest with the Markells? What are your thoughts? Why did that happen? When you only let them stay for an hour? Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at what happened with visitation, only when Wendy thinks she's going to have to testify does she suddenly allow like a really brief visit with the boys. So these boys don't even know the Markel family. I mean, they've seen them here and there for a little bit, and they're pretty much been brainwashed into thinking that you shouldn't talk to the Markells. The Markells is a bad name. The Markells have had reasons to be separated from them. They're not healthy people to associate with. So they're doing it only for the optics. They're doing it minimally, and it actually looks so bad. If you hate any contact with a Markel so bad that you can't even facilitate extensive overnights, and why not just send them up to see the Markel family up in Canada for a couple weeks and every summer. I mean, it just reeks of control, and it's sort of like a cult type setup where these boys are in a cult and they can't have contact with the outside world with any of the Markells. So it's really sick and sad. Kayla's asking, when Dan's alarm was triggered the day before his murder and when he got notification, do you think that she did that somehow, or Luis or Sigfredo did it to make it look like a robbery attempt gone wrong? I think that might have been just a accidental trigger or something like that. It could have been something else where they were actually trying to set the alarm. Could Wendy have done that? I just think Wendy probably would have tried to stay away from it at that point because she didn't know if she could run into the hitmen. I don't think she knew exactly when they're going to be there, but I think it was, something that if it was either some kind of technical glitch or whatnot, it might have been the hitman, but we just don't know. I'm not going to speculate on that, but it very well could be. I just don't know, so I don't want to have a guess on that. But it's a good question, definitely a good question. It possibly could be. Yeah, it's getting cold in Canada. Yeah, no doubt. I'm so tired of asking if LR to testify, and if so, to give that scary stare to Donna Adelson. Um, let's see. I would say the LR. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on LR. Can somebody help me out on this? Luis Rivera. Okay, sorry, I haven't seen LR as abbreviation. So Luis Rivera testified and give that scary stare to Donna Adelson. Yeah, he might do that. I'm so tired. You're referencing the stare down he had with Charlie, where Charlie was like sheepishly not trying to look at Luis Rivera, but Luis Rivera is doing a like I could kill you kind of stare down, and it was really a powerful impact there for the jury to see that. Yep. Thank you. Sorry, I had a little mind blank there. Sadie's asking if Wendy had never told the police about Charlie's joke, would the outcome has still been the same? I think it would have been because other people would have come forward and said she joked about it. I mean, think about it. Jeff Lacasse mentioned it, that she mentioned it a number of times. And so the the fact is Jeff Lacasse's testimony is golden, so they're not going to be able to poke holes in that. But I think she was scared and threw her family under a bus. She was scared, didn't care what happened to them. She's willing to let them go down so she could walk free. Dr. Martinez saying this may be a completely ridiculous question, but when Wendy gets arrested, could they subpoena the boys to testify? I hope not, but I can see Wendy Adelson using them to save her. I just don't see that happening. And obviously, they'd interview them first before they subpoena them. So, unless the boys had some knowledgeable thing to add, I think the boys are old enough now they should interview them, but whether they will or not remains to be seen. A lot of attorneys that are prosecuting law enforcement, they sort of figure out, well, let's leave the kids off limits. But I think in this case, there could probably be some telling thing, like Hoffman was Dan mentioned in the home. Remember when he testified that every morning and night they have pictures of Dan above their beds and they're saying prayers for him. So I just don't believe that at all. I think that was all made up, and so some stuff like that you could use for impeachment as well. CH is asking, do attorneys usually get in trouble if their client prevails on a claim of ineffective assistance to counsel? What's the standard for prevailing on that claim? Reasonableness. Well, it's no, the attorneys do not get in trouble unless they did something unethical. Normally, ineffective assistance to counsel is just meaning you didn't do enough of your homework, you didn't present the right theory, you left he left details unresolved. You didn't follow up with the right witnesses, and you basically sat on your hands. And there's sort of it's like it's like a standard that the courts will look at, and they'll make the balancing a test on basically the due process clause. Is like, is this something that could have affected the outcome? The fact that the attorney didn't do this and that and the other, and so it is very troubling when you have a lawyer that's so terrible and they don't do a good job, and ultimately, it doesn't help do justice for the client. You wonder, well, did the attorney screw up so bad that was like really one of the main causes of the conviction? So that's the kind of thing courts are looking at. But no, it's not something where the lawyer actually gets in trouble for, per se. And so they still keep their license. It's not like an ethical violation where you could lose your license and that kind of thing. It's just an appellate review, and if they don't meet the standard of competency and zealous representation, then yeah, it can get the case thrown out. It's one of the main reasons cases get overturned on appeal, for criminal cases. That is. Eva's asking, do I think Katie's attorney is being called to test? Why do I think Katie's attorney is being called to testify? Yeah, I think that could have to do with maybe the talking about a joint defense agreement. Maybe why would they be bringing that out? It could have to do with the Adelson's willing or having been paying the defense attorneys for Katie, and also Sigfredo. So Sigfredo, when he first got arrested, Katie gave his attorney $15,000. Where does Katie come up with that kind of money? So is it possible her sister had it? Who knows? Remains to be seen. But I think that could be any of those kind of issues as well. Also, remember, Charlie denied whether his attorney reached out to any of the other hitman's attorneys. He said no, like he's just like, no, of course not, kind of thing. And so this can show that the they acted like guilty people, and they tried to circle their wagons around so law enforcement couldn't pull anyone in for questioning and get them to flip. Jersey Jude is asking, how did Donna know about Patty and YouTube? Is she allowed to have internet in jail? She might have been following that before even the case. The case was before she got arrested, let's say, or otherwise, I'm not sure how she would see that in jail. Maybe she does have internet; she can watch it on her tablet. So yeah, that could be a possibility as well. I'm just not sure of those exact rules there in Tallahassee jail in Leon County. Uh, John is asking about the light behind me. No, I did not create that. It's like a steampunk lamp of John's, and he brought that overseas, and he's got. It's a pretty heavy device. That's all true steel behind me with the lights, and that gauge is not. It's just ornamental. It's not actually functional. But at one time, some of this would have been functional, and I think it's actually made by, I think, Fuji or something like that. Mitsubishi or Fuji or something like that is what a lot of the heavy metal is made out of. So yeah, thanks to John. I like it as well. Thanks. New York Patriot lady saying, John, Carl, can the Markel boys be emancipated now? You know, I think that's something that is a possibility, but I think they're so brainwashed now. I don't think it's a realistic outcome at all. Janie Garnett 442 is asking, do I think the Adelsons have committed heinous crimes before this one and got away with them? I'm not going to speculate on that. I would say it sounds like Charlie was doing a lot of stuff with cash. He was thinking it was the IRS. That was his first guess when Donna called him up, said she had that what turned out to be the bump by the undercover agent. So yeah, definitely sounds like there's a lot of stuff going on to get that kind of money. I can say dentists don't make that kind of money normally. For the $8 million collectively that they had, so something insider trading or something like that. I don't know, but anyway, that kind of stuff is not going to be brought up at trial. It's too prejudicial. But I'm surprised they weren't investigated and pursued that way by at least the IRS. Detective Machin is saying, "How could Katie not have taken the deal?" Yeah, that's one of the things that makes this case so bizarre. The characters that are in this case are so, it's just so baffling how so many people made bad decisions before, during, and after the murder. It's really astounding. It makes this true crime case one of the most bizarre ones you'll ever see. Jay Cass asking if there's a way to send me a private message. You have info you want to give me. You can send it to, jurytrialmentor at gmail.com or my law firm address, which is steinbecklaw at gmail.com. And that's what you could send me. There's a few things that folks have sent me the last couple days. I've not responded back to y'all yet, but if you're listening, I'll still get back to you here in the next couple days. Daniel DeStefan, let me see. DeStefano, CPA, is saying, thanks again for an awesome overview. I think you talked about this before. Why does the defense want to move their table so the jury can see Donna? I talked about that. And actually, it's sort of one of those things where be careful what you ask for, because I think Donna facing a jury is actually going to make it worse for the defense. And the reason the judge proposed that is because they were saying that three of the jurors in the largest courtroom could not really see Charlie. And so by Charlie being blocked out by the three heads of the two prosecutors and then Daniel Rashbaum, that these jurors could not really see him well. Well, the jury box is higher than what the attorney said, so that was sort of misleading. But the other thing is, like, Charlie is trying to hide behind the lawyers, so he had no interest in really engaging with the jury. And so, the judge said, "Well, if visibility to the jurors is a problem, well, let's go ahead and move the table and have them face the jury." So, I mean, what's he going to say? No, no, Judge, we didn't really mean that. So, I think in the end, this is going to help the jury really see the shiftiness and the guilt that's going to be on Donna's facial and body expressions and demeanor. Mel is asking, how are the cats? Where's LJ? I saw Leo right here by my feet. So they move around here, and it's up to them. I let them have free range here. So if they want to come or go, I guess once in a while I've grabbed them, but Leo's sort of too far for me to grab. But in any event, they're doing all good. Thank you. Let's see here. The May Angelitis is saying, do you think Charlie has moved to Dakota so Harvey can't personally visit him and relay information from Rashomon on how to testify? The only way is now by recorded phone calls. No, I don't think they have that kind of strategy involved in moving him out of there. I think that they're just probably shopping around looking for any state that could take him. And maybe Florida took somebody in return that was causing problems there. So, in any event, yeah, it's not that strategic. They're just looking to get him out of where they have probably a less number of Latin kings or other people that threaten him. But in any event, I think it is harder for Harvey. I know he visited him twice when he was in up there near Jacksonville, between Jacksonville and Tallahassee. But we do not know, because the state of South Dakota does not release those kind of records on what visitations there is for inmates in the state pen there. I'm so tired of saying some say that Donna Adelson was a mastermind, but I think she was manipulated by Winnie Adelson. She went 70+ years without committing crime. Well, I've said that before, with that some folks say that, Charlie was a mastermind, and then when he got convicted, then I know other folks saying, well, no, Donna was a mastermind. But I thought Wendy's a real mastermind of this thing, and she like I said in the last live stream, I mean, like somebody watching this said, sort of like Wendy tied up her family on railroad tracks and took off. So, in any case, yeah, I think she knew what buttons to push on people, and she's played it really good so far. But the prosecution needs to up their game and not let this get so ridiculously delayed in prosecuting her. Cindy's asking, is Mark Weinstein going to get out of his subpoena? I don't know that. I don't know if anybody's tried to get out of these subpoenas or not, but that remains to be seen. All right, Timothy Squire saying, do I think Adelson will eventually become an adjective? Yeah, I mean, I don't know that this case is covered that well enough on the national and world stage to be considered like an adjective everybody will use. But in any event, I just feel bad for the honorable Dr. Rob Adelson that has to deal with his family. It's done such heinous murder. So In any event, it's certain players. It's not all of the people with this name. There's a lot of people have that name, so I don't think the name will be forever a name that people would use an adjective per se. Tracy Smith asked, "What's my favorite dumb move that Donna did?" Mine is her washing the money. Yeah, that's that's up there. I think the other one that she said to Charlie's like, "Hey, this is about you and me." When Charlie kept on trying to ask her what this bump thing was all about, and so yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it's a dumb move after dumb move. You could look at the letter. I mean, everything she did is really a really something not thought out well. I guess it's Mike Weinstein. Yeah. CBM McDie is saying, "Can you please explain what exactly a grand jury is?" I'm sure I could have looked it up, but I haven't. Grand jury is basically in a lot of states, instead of having the district attorney or state attorney's offices file basically paperwork showing how somebody's guilty of a crime and then bring it to a judge and having them sign off on what they call a trial information. And then that gives them a warrant for arrest to arrest that person and charge them and bring them all the way to trial in front of a jury then and get them convicted and sentenced. What a grand jury is basically it's a good protection to make sure that there's an actual presentation of witnesses and not just a paper draw, but a presentation of witnesses that go before a jury, grand jury, and it can be something less than a 12. And basically, those jurors get to decide if it should be brought to a trial of 12 jurors to vote guilty or not guilty. And so they're basically doing a gatekeeper function to make sure that they're screening cases properly, and they're not just the government's not just rubber stamping stuff, getting people arrested and prosecuted, and then you waste all this time in court with the jury because there was no initial screening process other than law enforcement. And law enforcement can get sort of tunnel vision at times and not realize that there's other defense matters out there. One of the things I can tell you in Texas is really nice is that unlike other states like Iowa, for example, you don't have a grand jury there at all. It's all this prosecutors is drumming up paperwork to file with the judge. And then I can say in Texas though that you do have any felony has to go in front of a grand jury. And you'll, as a defense attorney, I know when the grand jury is going to meet. And what I've done before is I've actually presented a packet to the grand jury explaining why this client of mine should not be charged or indicted, let's say. And if they vote to indict, then that's called an indictment. If they don't think there's enough evidence there to indict, then they note what they call in Texas a no bill. So if they no bill the indictment efforts by the state, then basically that person is not arrested then and charged with that crime. So I think it's actually a good process to have that kind of grand jury process and to allow the defense to present stuff. So what I've done before is like I'll present a packet and I'll say basically that these witnesses are outside the courtroom and they can prove, and then I give a summary of how they could exonerate the client I have that's facing this possible indictment. So it's worked good, and it allows me to kill a case before it even gets to the main prosecutors up in the main courthouse. Hopefully that answered your question there. Matilda's asking, do defendants attend depositions? It depends what state it is. Like I can tell you, like some states will allow depositions there in criminal cases, and other states you don't have any right to be attended depositions. I think Florida is one of those that do not allow defendants to take part in the depositions, which I think is sort of wrong. I think it's better if the defendant can be there. But when you talk about logistics and all that kind of stuff to move all that many defendants, when you got dozens and dozens of deposition to attend and maybe a big murder case, having the defendant logistically and the resources from law enforcement and the jailers could be just insurmountable. And so that's why I think it's sheer logistics issue. So they rely on the defense attorneys to basically tell their client how the testimony went, and they'll have a transcript that their client can read, and or possibly a video as well. Okay, Charlie Delta Whiskey is asking, do I think Charlie and or Donna have watched Wendy's police interview? Wendy throws her entire family under the bus the first 15 minutes. I'd be curious how it's Charlie or Donna. Yeah, I do think that that is definitely something that they've all seen. But when you listen to him, I don't think he grasped the magnitude of that. I think he still thought, listen to Rajbam, he's going to walk. And I think only after after he saw the closing arguments and heard how and he thought about, well, who can I point the finger at, not myself. I think that's when he realized, gosh, Wendy really sold us down the river to law enforcement. So that's why I think he's like probably seething mad at her. He's probably more mad at Wendy than anything else right now. All right, I'll ask two more questions and we'll call it a night. Thanks for your support of the Just from Raquel's here. Van F is asking, how does Dan even question Charlie without crossing so many lines? It is very as long as he doesn't talk about, does he want to flip on mom? There's a lot of stuff he could talk about, but still it's very bizarre. I think that it's one of the most bizarre things you'll see as a defense lawyer. I don't know any defense lawyer that would do something like that in these states I practice in, and they probably don't have that kind of thing happen very much on especially a murder case in Florida either. So yeah, it's just one of those really bizarre things. Another head scratch that makes you wonder about this whole Florida case with the Adelson crime family of South Florida. Okay, Rosemary Romero is asking, do I think that Charlie and Donna have a police interrogation video, one where they arrested? Will the public ever see those? No, they were never interrogated. And initially, like Donna was, some people say excuse me, Wendy was interrogated, but Wendy was not interrogated. It was only an interview. They did not have enough information to try to cross-examine her and get her to confess. So basically, an interrogation is that where you're trying to put pressure on the suspect that you have no doubts is the perpetrator of the crime. You're trying to get them to confess. So it's really that the way you're working them over, trying to beat them up and get them to admit to doing the crime. That's what really an interrogation is about. So in any event, so no, there was never. They invoked Charlie was never interviewed by the police, and Donna was never interviewed either. I think that when law enforcement called Wendy up, they I think there's some indications that they all had lawyers and that they were lawyering up. So that's why the only chance that Amy Adelson was interviewed by the police was when one time that Wendy went in there and talked to Detective Isom. Okay, last question of the night here. Let's see who we got. Looking for a good one here. You guys got a lot of good questions, a lot of good support. You guys are very smart about this case. And Jersey G is asking, I wonder how much money the Adelsons have left, lots of expenses. And I thought they originally had 10 million in the bank. Not a lot of money, in my opinion. Well, they had like over 8 million. So I think they still could have a lot of those assets available. I don't think they're going to run out of money defending these trials, but I think they'll come closer to that if once they arrest Wendy and also Harvey. I think they're going to really have to tee up a lot more millions of dollars to defend them. So that's another reason to prosecute, even if you don't get a conviction. Just putting them through that kind of financial grind of having to come up with money to hire the most expensive lawyers around. That I think that's a good thing to help get justice steered in the right direction. And if you're a prosecutor, who cares who they hire as a lawyer? You got the evidence in your favor. You got the truth on your side, and just go after it with boldness and conviction, and good things will happen. So with that, I'll go ahead and sign off now. Thanks for your support for the Markells, as I've said, and I'll be coming back on. I think instead of tomorrow night, I'll probably do it sometime next weekend as well, and we'll go from there. So y'all have a good night and a safe weekend.